Welcome to the Steps in Purpose podcast with Edie Ann. This podcast explores emotional awareness, faith, and purposeful living through short, reflective conversations designed to help you notice where you are and take your next step with clarity. Thanks for being here. Have you ever looked at a situation in your life and told yourself you had peace about it, but then you realized later that really all you kind of did was settle? Right? The question matters because from the outside, peace and settling can almost look the same. Both can appear calm, both can look steady, and both can come with a kind of quiet. Yet deep down, they carry a very different feeling in the soul. And that is where the truth lives. And I remember being told something years ago that stuck with me. If you make a decision and peace fills your soul about that decision, then that decision came from God. When your heart feels at peace and there's no spinning, there's no second guessing, no circling back through should you, could you, would you, right? That kind of peace is holy. It carries a quiet knowing. It feels anchored. It feels covered. It feels like God placed his hand on it and said, "This is where I led you." That kind of peace reaches deeper than any emotion. Okay? It rests in the heart in a way that feels steady and sure. That's why this conversation matters so much, because settling has a different texture. Settling can look quiet on the outside while your soul feels dim on the inside. Settling can look calm while something in you feels flat. Settling can sound like acceptance while your heart feels like it quietly gave up reaching. Right? Peace from God anchors you. Settling is going to make you feel smaller. One feels rooted in truth, while the other is going to feel you learned how to live with less, right? Kind of gave in. I think a lot of people know this feeling, even when they have never had words for it. Life wears us down in small ways. Disappointment stacks up on us, right? Waiting gets long. The effort gets heavy. You get tired of trying, tired of hoping, tired of carrying that small ache. And after a while, you just start adjusting. We do it a lot with our kids. You kind of give in, right? You don't want to deal with it, so you give in, so you settle. You tell yourself, this is enough, right? You tell yourself this is just how life is. You tell yourself you are being mature. You're being grateful and realistic, right? Meanwhile, something in your spirit keeps whispering that this does not feel like peace. It feels like you got used to something your soul was never meant to call home. That is where people get tripped up. Okay, because settling rarely arrives wearing a sign. We sometimes don't notice. It usually comes dressed like wisdom. It sounds responsible. It sounds grown up. It sounds spiritual sometimes. It says things like, "I'm fine with it now. I've accepted it. I made peace with it." Yet real peace from God has life in it. It may come with quiet, yet it also comes with clarity, right? It brings a rest that feels full, not empty. It brings this steadiness that feels alive, not stifled. When God gives peace about a decision, there's a deep anchoring in your soul. The inner debate grows quiet. The striving eases, right? The need to keep wrestling with it loosens its grip. You feel led. You feel clear. You feel that deep down exhale where your heart knows it's landed in the right place. That peace is beautiful because it does not make you feel smaller. It actually makes you feel steadier. I remember having to make the decision to have back surgery. And that was when my friend said, if you make the right decision that was led by God, you'll find peace in that decision. And I remember the day that I decided to have the surgery, and all of a sudden, everything just started falling into place. The scheduling, the appointments, nothing was feeling unsettled anymore. And that's when I knew that it had been led by God. Like that was what I was supposed to be doing. Settling works differently. If I had settled for that option, settling can happen when we get tired enough to stop reaching, right? It can happen when our heart's been disappointed enough times that it starts protecting itself by asking for less, right? It can happen in relationships, in work, in dreams, in our identity, in the way we speak to ourselves, and even in the way that we relate to God. We start calling something peace because calling it disappointment feels too painful. We start calling something acceptance because admitting we still long for more feels too vulnerable, like it's too hard to accept. We start calling something wisdom because it sounds better than saying our hope got weary, right? I think that is why this topic hits so deeply. So many people have learned how to survive by adjusting. And after a while, adjustment can just start feeling normal. We get used to carrying a flat version of our life, that we forget what it feels like to be fully awake inside. Then one day, maybe in a quiet moment, maybe in a prayer, maybe in a conversation with someone, maybe in the middle of hearing your own words, you realize that what you've been calling peace has left your spirit feeling pretty small. And when that realization comes, it's powerful because it wakes something up. There is such a difference between being at peace and simply living in resignation, right? Peace says, my soul is anchored here. Settling says, I learned how to live with less. Peace says, God led me and I know it deep in my heart. Settling says, I found a way to make this bearable. Peace carries trust. Settling carries heaviness. And peace from God anchors you. Settling is going to make you smaller. I also think this matters because people sometimes feel pressure to call every quiet season peace. Quiet doesn't necessarily mean peace, when really what they need is honesty, right? There's something sacred about being honest enough to say, this looks calm, yet it does not feel anchored in my soul. This looks stable, but it doesn't feel like the place God is leading me to. This looks acceptable from the outside, yet inside I feel the weight of something that doesn't fit. That kind of honesty creates room for God to meet us in that truth, right? Sometimes the clearest sign is found in what stays with you after the decision is made. When God gives peace, your heart rests there, okay? You may still walk through challenge, yet the soul stays anchored. When something comes from settling, your mind keeps revisiting it. It's going to keep going back to it, and your spirit's going to keep feeling dim, and your heart is going to keep carrying that quiet weight of what never fully landed in you. It's just not going to feel right. There's such a simple but powerful thing to notice. Peace from God anchors in the soul. Settling leaves the soul searching. So, maybe the invitation here is to get still enough to ask yourself, what kind of quiet have you been living in, right? Does it feel like peace of God that anchored your heart and directed your steps? Or does it feel like the quiet that came from learning how to live with less than what your soul knows is true? That question can open a lot, right? It can shine light on places where you've been enduring instead of living. You've been accommodating instead of aligning, adjusting instead of truly resting. And this is where grace matters, because nobody settles on purpose, right? We don't settle on purpose. This is what I want for my life. We don't do that on purpose. People settle because they are human. They settle because they're tired. They settle because the ache lasted longer than they expected. They settle because they wanted relief. So this is a conversation full of compassion, right? It is simply an invitation to come back into alignment with the kind of peace that God gives, the kind that anchors you in the deepest part of your heart and leaves you feeling clear, steady, and fully at rest in what you choose. So today, I want to leave you with this. Peace is in the heart if it's from God. Okay? When a decision leaves your soul feeling anchored and the circling stops, there is something sacred in that. There is something covered in that. There is something led in that. And if what you are calling peace has actually left you feeling smaller, flatter, or dimmer, maybe your heart is inviting you to look again. Pay attention to the places in your life that feel quiet, okay? Ask yourself whether that quiet is anchored in your soul, because God's peace anchors you. Settling simply teaches you how to stay still inside something heavy. Your heart knows the difference. And you got to remember, your next step matters. And if you want more of this, please come and visit my website at edieanne.com. That's EDIEANNE.com. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for spending this time with me. Until next time, keep stepping in purpose.